Las Vegas, the most popular gambling destination in the world. 38.5 million tourists a year. Over $10 billion made at its tables. But this spectacle of light hides a dark past. A story of organized crime on a national scale.
It was a sunny place for shady people.
In the 1950s, the mob built state-of-the-art casinos. They made millions from gambling profits, and millions more from an underground money siphoning operation.
The commodity is green, cash.
But the government declares war.
You can't just commit crime and do what you want. There is a price to pay for it.
Paranoia is in the air, and the mobsters turn against each other.
I just had the sense that I was going to get whacked.
By the 1980s, the Mafia's hold in Las Vegas is under threat, like never before. Las Vegas, Nevada, the 1950s. A hedonistic oasis in the middle of the Mojave Desert. In the aftermath of the Second World War, this is a chance to escape the straitjacket of Middle America and let your hair down.
Las Vegas, Nevada, the city of daytime sun and nighttime fun.
And the people behind the whole show, the Mafia. Las Vegas is the original gangster's paradise.
It was really unique to Las Vegas. They made the town, and they made it a prosperous town.
The Mafia makes millions of dollars in legitimate gambling profits. But they have far more at stake. An illegal financial operation called the Skim.
The commodity is green, cash. There's theft from the outside, there's theft from the inside, and there's skimming.
The Skim is money siphoned off from the casino's counting rooms before it can be taxed. The amount runs into the millions. Mafia families from across the nation each receive a share in the Skim based on the percentage of ownership it holds in a casino.
There's no record of the money, so it's extremely valuable to the mob. It's money that they can spend 100% of and have to account to no one for.
And good evening, Las Vegas.
Radio DJ True Hawkins grew up in Las Vegas. During the 1950s, his father was a cashier at the Mafia-run Riviera Casino. But he didn't just count the money, he helped the mob run the Skim.
One of his jobs became to put $100 bills in a lockbox drawer and set it on the back counter, and it disappeared, and an empty one showed up. That was every day, 5 days a week while he was at work. And it was just understood that that box didn't exist, never happened, nobody talked about it.
The Mafia holds a monopoly over the gambling and hotel industry, the biggest employer in town. Going to work then means going to work for the mob. Even though it was illegal, for employees like True Hawkins' father, counting the Skim was just part of everyday life.
In my father's eyes, he was just doing his job. What I got to do? That's what they told me. Here's your paycheck. You did it. You knew what was going on. However, the approach of all of those mob-connected guys, they were perfect gentlemen to everybody at work.
The Mafia keeps violent crime out of Las Vegas. They have too much at stake. The gambling profits and the Skim are worth millions, and they don't want to attract heat from the authorities or scare the tourists away.
We didn't have crime in that era. It wasn't allowed. Everybody knew that. It was just taken for granted that the mob guys were the ones running the major business in town, and everything was safe and controlled. It was kind of a comfortable place to live, really.
But just how the Mafia claimed this stronghold in Las Vegas is a story that began back in 1931, when Nevada became the first and only state in the USA to legalize gambling. Sin City was born as tourists flocked in to sample its illicit attractions. And 4 years later, the town received another boost. 33 miles away on the Nevada-Arizona border, the Hoover Dam opened. The dramatic spectacle attracted tourists from far and wide. And after taking in the views, they headed to Las Vegas to experience a different type of thrill. Chorus girl Nancy Williams arrived in the city in the early 1940s to dance at the frontier-style El Rancho Casino. Back then, the Strip was mostly desert.
We could saddle our own horse, get on, ride out by the railroad tracks, and there were bridle paths on both sides of the Strip. And the Strip was one lane each way.
In the 1940s, Las Vegas was considered an open city. Jewish and Italian mobsters, part of a national crime syndicate, were brought together by new business ventures. The most powerful of all is the Chicago family, or the Outfit. The Mafia were well placed to run the entertainment industry in Las Vegas after years of running illegal gambling dens and race wires during Prohibition. Among the first to spot Las Vegas's potential, Mayor Lansky, a Jewish gangster from New York and North America's most powerful mobster. Lansky controlled the heroin trade with Mexico and used the money from this illegal activity to build an extravagant new hotel in Las Vegas. He sent his close ally, Bugsy Siegel, out to Nevada to oversee the construction. Lansky and Siegel shared a dark and violent past. They ran an organization dubbed Murder Inc. by the press, responsible for the deaths of over 400 people. Siegel alone murdered over 30 individuals. But in public, Siegel presents himself as a dashing casino frontman. On December 26, 1946, the Flamingo Hotel opened its doors to the public. This was a new-look Las Vegas, spit and sawdust replaced by Hollywood style and lavish entertainment in the middle of the desert.
The whole atmosphere of the hotel was totally elegant, and it was definitely not Western. It was definitely not wear your cowboy boots and come in here. You should have a nice suit on and come in here.
But Siegel loses favor with his bosses. The project has gone massively over budget, and the mob suspect him and his mistress of stealing cash from the Flamingo. On June 20th, 1947, Bugsy Siegel finally pays the price for his indiscretion. While in Los Angeles, he is shot 5 times, and at 42 years of age, the infamous Las Vegas mobster is dead. But he leaves behind a legacy. Las Vegas is now firmly on the tourist map. During the next decade, the crime syndicate poured money made from their nationwide criminal activities into the construction of 8 more casinos, including the Sahara, the Riviera, the Tropicana, and the Stardust. And the mobsters themselves even became part of the city's attraction.
It was just the glamour of organized crime that the people thought was here, and that's what brought some of the tourists here, was to maybe see a mobster.
The Mafia's public image was that of perfect host. High rollers were given complimentary meals and the best seats and rooms in the house.
They were good at their jobs because they knew how to treat people. They made it a point to know people's names. And when they'd come in, have you had dinner? Would you like to see the show? What can we do for you? That was their attitude. They had their hands on everything that was going on in the hotels every day. They weren't sitting in an office somewhere. They were on the floor, they were in the kitchens, and they wanted to see that everything was done right. And some of them even would cook for us.
It was only in Las Vegas that tourists could rub shoulders at after-show parties with Hollywood stars like Lauren Bacall and Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland and David Niven.
It was a class town. I mean, women would fashion evening gowns, and men would be dressed to the nines. The restaurants were great. Your casinos welcomed you like you were a person rather than just an account, you know. I mean, they knew you by your first name. It was great.
Las Vegas is on a roll. During the 1950s, with the explosion of the Mafia-run gaming industry, the population rises from just under 25,000 to nearly 65,000. But the next decade will challenge the mob's rule in Sin City like never before. They face increasing pressure from the federal authorities, and this plays straight into the hands of one of North America's most powerful business tycoons, Howard Hughes. The battle for Las Vegas is only just beginning. Las Vegas, 1966. Caesar's Palace, the city's biggest and boldest hotel yet, opens its doors to the public. The cost, $19 million. Almost every cent financed by the corrupt Teamsters pension fund.
The largest amount of centralized capital in the free world is the pension funds of the American worker. And the monies there literally helped to build the casinos in Las Vegas.
The Central States Teamsters Pension Fund, headed by corrupt President Jimmy Hoffa, became the Mafia's private piggy bank. Pensions illegally siphoned off from union members provide the Mafia with construction loans throughout Las Vegas. In the late 1950s, these loans built highways, a high-class shopping center, golf courses, and a new hospital. And by the 1960s, the loans are used to build and refurbish hotels. But this Mafia-induced expansion attracts attention from an unwelcome quarter, the government.
I am pleased to accept the position of the Attorney Generalship of the United States.
When Robert Kennedy is appointed as Attorney General in 1960, he upped the ante in the fight against organized crime. It results in the conviction of corrupt Teamsters President Jimmy Hoffa in 1964. But despite this, the Teamsters simply install another corrupt president. And for them, it's business as usual as they continue to bankroll the Las Vegas building boom. But in 1966, the arrival of legendary aviator and American tycoon Howard Hughes provides the Mafia with just the chance it needs to clean up its public image. Hughes already owns over 25,000 acres out in the desert near Las Vegas, an area that one day will become the suburb of Summerlin, but he wants more. He recruits FBI and CIA espionage and global intelligence expert Robert Maheu to help him orchestrate a new business plan in Las Vegas.
He says, Bob, I want to be a big fish in a small pond. I want to make an impression. He wanted to buy the airport. He wanted to buy a TV station. He wanted to buy all the raw land that was available. And that was his original intention, not to buy a hotel or to go in the gaming business.
Although Hughes places Maheu in charge of negotiating his business deals, they never actually meet in person.
Two men who had never seen each other, never shook hands, never eyeballed each other, and yet I ended up with authorities that were just absolutely awesome.
On Thanksgiving Day, 1966, Howard Hughes checks into the Desert Inn, one of the predominant Mafia-backed casinos on the Strip. He is accompanied by a group of strict advisors, most of them Mormon bankers, who shun drinking and gambling and control Hughes's personal life. The entourage takes up the entire top floor. From the moment Hughes arrives, the increasingly reclusive and drug-addicted billionaire never leaves his penthouse suite.
New Year's came, we were still there. They had promised these newly renovated suites to their big rollers, and we would not give up our suites.
The Desert Inn's Mafia-backed management wants the Hughes entourage out.
I mean, they were so peeved at us because we were not gambling, We were not contributing financially except the cost of the rooms. And at the beginning of March, they made it very clear that if we did not get out of there, that they would bodily take Mr. Hughes down 9 flights of stairs and put him out in the street. And half kiddingly, I said, if you want a place to sleep tonight, Howard, or tomorrow, you better start negotiations to buy a hotel.
And that's exactly what he does. In 1967, Detroit mobster Mo Dalitz finally helped seal the deal. Hughes buys the operating rights to the Desert Inn. This gives him ownership of the lucrative operating revenues from the casino floor and hotel rooms, as opposed to the building itself. Howard Hughes then gets casino fever.
I suddenly received a phone call from Mr. Hughes, and he said, Bob, he's laughing, and he said, Bob, how many more of these toys are available? I said, what do you mean, toys? He said, how many more of these casinos are available?
It's perfect timing for the mob. The IRS are investigating their casinos, and rumors of a crackdown by federal authorities are rife.
We knew that several of the casinos were in dire straits and problems with the federal authorities. And that's where we went. We bought the casinos. The Sands, the Castaways, the Frontier, the Silver Slipper.
Sammy Davis Jr. described Howard Hughes as the only man who plays Monopoly with real buildings.
Hughes' spending spree ends with the tycoon controlling a third of the revenue generated on the Strip. He becomes the largest independent employer in the state of Nevada. To the outside world, it looks as if the mobsters have been driven out.
He has, by buying out certain hotels, retired some of our more dubious characters, for which we're very grateful.
But behind the scenes, the mob is unwilling to totally relinquish control of the casino floors, and they use intimidation to hold sway over many employees in town. The mob attempts to muscle in on what it believes is its inherent right, access to the counting rooms and the skim. The Chicago outfit sends in enforcer mobster Johnny Roselli to face down Maheu.
Roselli came to me after the purchase, and he said, here's the man that I want to run the casino, and here's the man I want to run entertainment. And I said, Johnny, drop dead. We had a deal, and I said, you're not going to have one thing to say about how we run the casino. I saw for the first time a very disappointed and not very happy Johnny Roselli.
Roselli's charming public persona hides a violent criminal background. He lets his true colors show.
He gave me a look that I had never seen in my life. And he said, I'm not an easy guy to deal with. And I gave him the best look I had. And I said, this may come to you as a surprise, but neither am I.
Maheu holds firm and the mob backs down. He's emphatic. In Hughes casinos, the skim must stop. From now on, Maheu intends to run a new accounting system. With tycoon Howard Hughes stamping his business approval in Las Vegas, hotel corporations like the Ramada and Hilton soon follow suit. Convinced Hughes has finally helped the city shed its Mafia heritage. On Thanksgiving 1970, 4 years after his arrival, the ailing Hughes leaves Las Vegas. His aides take him to the Bahamas, having convinced him Maheu is now the enemy. Over the next 20 years, Suma, the corporation created to look after Hughes' real estate holdings, sells its casino interest to several corporate investors. But while Hughes was responsible for cleaning up the tarnished image of Las Vegas, the mob still has investments tied up in several other casinos. Among the most important, the Stardust, the Chicago outfit's flagship gaming resort. Hughes attempted to buy it, but the Las Vegas Department of Justice prevented the purchase because they believed Hughes held a monopoly over the local casino trade.
To me, it's very simple. I mean, if we had been allowed to buy the Stardust, they would have ridden organized crime out of Las Vegas.
The Stardust Casino gives the Chicago outfit the stronghold it needs to take it into the next decade. The early 1970s, Las Vegas has a new image. Billionaire businessman Howard Hughes has bought out several Mafia-backed casinos and stamped his corporate approval on the city. But the Chicago outfit, overseen by Godfather Joseph Yablonsky, still controls the Fremont, the Hacienda, the Marina, and most important of all, the Stardust. At the heart of its operation, the Skim, and the outfit needs someone in place to protect it. In 1971, it sends Tony Spilotro to Las Vegas, a mobster with a violent reputation who grew up in the Chicago Mafia.
Was rumored over the years to have committed several murders, in fact, some very grisly murders, actually.
He was the enforcer, period. They didn't dare cut into the Skim because if Chicago called him and told him to go take care of them, they knew that they would be killed. So he was a constant threat that kept the Skim honest.
In Nevada, Spilotro lives up to his violent reputation. In the next 3 years, more gangland-style murders are committed than in the previous 25 years. And the figure continues to rise over the next decade. But the authorities do not have the evidence they need to convict Spilotro, and the deaths remain unsolved. Part of Spilotro's crew is former mobster Frank Cullotta. He too grew up in the Chicago underworld.
If anything is put out in that desert, that it's just going to disintegrate over a matter of time and there's nothing going to be there anymore. So that's a good spot to dump somebody. It would have been, let's say. When need be, Tony was very violent. If you robbed money from him, like if he had an interest going and you snuck in there and he found out, you were in big trouble, especially if you knew him.
Dominic Spinelli came to Las Vegas as a professional card counter. The former Boston mobster and illegal bookmaker knew full well the weight that Spilotro's presence carried in Las Vegas.
Word went out throughout the underworld. If you're thinking of going to Vegas and doing something wrong, don't go or you'll be very sorry.
His reputation was so fierce and so strong that most anybody would have thought that he had complete control individually over these casinos, which isn't true.
With Spilotro in place to make sure no one steps out of line, the Chicago outfit formed an alliance with a seemingly legitimate owner, known by the FBI as a straw man.
The straw man was just someone who had no criminal connections anywhere, but could be controlled like a puppet by the people who put them in place there.
And that man is 31-year-old lawyer Alan Glick. Despite having no gaming experience, he secures a loan of $62.7 million from the Teamsters Union. Under the umbrella of the Argent Corporation, he becomes the official owner of the Stardust, Fremont, Hacienda, and Marina casinos. Glick mistakenly believes he can control the activities of the casinos he's just bought.
Alan Glick probably got into the casinos and got way over his head rather quickly. I don't think he really believed that he could be controlled by the mob the way he was.
Instead, the powerhouse secretly running the casino is gambling expert Frank Lefty Rosenthal, a shady figure well known in the Chicago Mafia.
I was born in Chicago, and my friends included many, many people that might be or would be labeled as unsavory, connected.
Among them, an acquaintance from his childhood, Tony Spilotro. Rosenthal recognizes associating with a mob figure like Spilotro poses a threat to his public persona and his career in Las Vegas.
We did have a mutual agreement that it'd be best if we did not socialize. I knew that I wouldn't be able to sustain myself job-wise, if we were to engage in any type of activities.
Unlike Spilatro, Rosenthal has a head for numbers rather than violence. He installs the first race and sports betting parlor in Las Vegas, and the profits quickly stack up. Rosenthal does his best to keep up appearances and distance himself from Spilatro's street thuggery. But his connections with the Chicago mob soon bring him under scrutiny from the Nevada Gaming Board.
I had a problem with the Gaming Commission, Gaming Control Board from day one. The perception was that I was a two-headed monster, an associate, an affiliate of organized crime. And I just wasn't able to shake that reputation.
Rosenthal's links with Spilatro seal his fate, and his gaming card is refused, preventing him from running a casino. But in an attempt to sidestep the authorities, he assumes the self-created position of the Stardust Casino's entertainment director. And he lives up to the title by becoming the star of his own program, The Frank Rosenthal Show.
Las Vegas Strip, it's the all-new Frank Rosenthal Show.
True Hawkins worked on the studio floor during the recording of Rosenthal's program.
Everyone in town knew that the whole idea was to make him appear to be respectable, and it was just an open public joke that, oh yeah, it's the sports show with Lefty Rosenthal. It was one of those open, public, everybody knew but nobody talked about things, like the Skim. Everybody knew it, but nobody talked about it.
With Lefty Rosenthal on a PR offensive, behind the scenes, Alan Glick loses an ongoing power struggle with the Maverick entertainment director. In 1979, it's all over for the casino strawman. The mob forces Glick to sell the Argent casinos to another mob-connected holding company, the Trans-Sterling Corporation. Beyond the casinos and the Skim, the Mafia's criminal empire spreads throughout Las Vegas. Enforcer Tony Spilatro makes money from other traditional Mafia activities. He lets drug dealers and bookmakers operate on his turf. In return, they have to pay him a street tax. He also provides juice, loan sharking deals with a high interest rate.
Everybody needs money in Las Vegas. We had doctors that were on juice, we had lawyers that were on juice, and all these people don't want their wives to know that they're losing money. So they borrow from us.
A mispayment demands a heavy reminder, Mafia style.
There were a couple times that people come up a little lame on their payment, and you'd go over there and scare them a little bit. You didn't want to really kill them because you'd never get your money back then. So you went over there and you scared them, you made them think that you would kill them, or you'd break their legs, or we would hurt them physically.
And then Spilatro authorizes a new crime wave in the city. It's a first. Mafia-run burglary in Las Vegas. With Spilatro's backing, Cullotta recruits several mobster associates and forms a jewelry theft ring, the Hole in the Wall Gang.
It used to be a no-no to steal in this town, but I said, don't worry about it, I got the okay. He says, that's how your guys can earn, and if they make big scores, you know I want a piece of the action. I said, no problem.
Times are changing. Burglary is a non-traditional Mafia money-making activity, but the Chicago outfit turns a blind eye. The financial proceeds are just too tempting. And rising tourist numbers and a citywide expansion offer rich pickings. By 1979, during the last decade, tourist numbers have almost doubled to over 11 million a year. Construction of new housing is spreading out across the desert plains. Small-town Vegas is being swallowed up in an urban sprawl, and it's a burglar's paradise. Private houses, hotel rooms, and offices, nowhere is safe. The Mafia has the insiders to help them. Maids, valets, rogue cops, cab drivers, maintenance men, who supply the information in return for a bribe.
So we had all this information at our fingertips. And I used to give this to my crew, and they'd go out and they'd rob all these houses. I mean, they go out maybe 4 nights a week, and maybe commit 3 or 4 robberies a night, and they were averaging like $200,000-300,000 a week.
A history of corruption within the local legal and political authorities makes stopping mob activity in Las Vegas a tough task.
We understood that the long arm of organized crime had reached out to certain politicians, including judges and lawyers and elected officials.
But then, in 1979, the fight against organized crime receives a major boost. The Metro Police experience a major reshuffling of personnel after the sheriff is indicted for tax fraud and loses his post. Former narcotics detective Kent Clifford is placed in charge of the Intelligence Bureau. The shift in law enforcement sends ripples of panic through the Las Vegas Mafia. It's a clear signal the mob can no longer count on the authorities to ignore their increasingly blatant street crimes and their access to the skim. Spilatro's criminal activities also motivate the FBI and Metro Police Intelligence to join forces for the first time. Between them, they come up with a new plan to bring down the illegal activities of the mob. They hide microphones all over Las Vegas, in cars, parking lots, public telephones, even the airport, hoping to pick up any criminal activity.
We decided to use continuous pressure on these people, hoping that not only would they make a mistake that we could capitalize on, but also hoping someday that perhaps one of the participants would tire of the pressure and decide to cooperate with authorities.
No one is put under more pressure than Tony Spilatro himself, the linchpin for the Chicago mob's interest in Las Vegas. He finds himself in the glare of the media spotlight.
We planned that if we illuminated him, that would put the heat on him from the boys from Chicago, and they'd either remove him or we'd get him in jail, one of the two.
And the plan works. The pressure begins to get to Spilatro.
Tony became very paranoid, And there was a period there where I thought maybe he was on coke or something, because he'd stay up all night. And they were getting a hold of him. The newspaper, they used to write about him all the time, so it was getting to him.
Spilatro's crews are also under surveillance. Cullotta uses his illegal earnings to open a restaurant, the Upper Crust Pizza Parlor. Although legitimate, it's a good place for him to meet up with his mob associates. The FBI responds by immediately placing the restaurant under watch.
They would gather there on a nightly basis. Fortunately for us, they had tables and chairs outside and made surveillance a lot more easily done.
You know, if you see a funny-looking car with 2 square-looking guys driving it, you know that they weren't supposed to be in that neighborhood, that they were feds. They would put her hand over our mouth like this. Now, you can't read my lips, and he could hear me on the right or left of me. And that's the way we used to do it. And they'd go crazy. So they used lip readers. They tried everything.
And then, FBI agent Lynn Ferrin has a breakthrough. His team identifies a mobster called Phil Ponto with ties to the Stardust Casino. The FBI believes he could be the key to their investigation into the casino skim.
He was the only guy I ever seen go in and out of the money room. The cops couldn't even go in there. The security used to go in and out, back and forth from the pits in and out. It's me. He's got a good job.
On the first Sunday of every month, Ponto meets with Joseph Tellerico, a mobster and Teamsters official from Chicago.
It was usually in the parking lot of a hardware store. So they would walk, they'd talk. We would attempt to listen to what they were saying or record what they were saying. Ponto would always be observed passing a brown paper sack from himself to Tellerico.
The FBI believes the brown paper sack contains thousands of dollars, cash from the Stardust Casino's skim. Every month, Tellerico takes this money back to Joey Aiuppa, the Chicago outfit's boss.
We actually followed these meets between Ponto and Tellerico for 18 months, every month, just like clockwork. They would meet and pass that bag.
Finally, wiretaps inside the Stardust Casino give the FBI the evidence it needs to obtain a search warrant. But to its dismay, the FBI discovers the investigation has been compromised.
Instead of there being $300,000 in cash, there was cookies and wine. I'm sure the mob got a real chuckle that day with our bad luck. Sad day for the FBI.
But while convictions relating to the skim from the casinos continue to elude the FBI, elsewhere it hits pay dirt. Federal agents pick up word that the hole-in-the-wall gang is planning a big robbery. It's a move that will blow up in the mob's face and bring their boss, Tony Spilatro, and the Chicago outfit's hold in Las Vegas crashing down. Las Vegas, 1982. The FBI is investigating the Mafia-run Fremont and Stardust casinos for skimming money before it can be taxed. And Chicago mob enforcer Tony Spilatro's criminal empire is under increasing scrutiny from the authorities. But despite this, Spilatro gives Frank Cullotta the go-ahead to oversee the hole-in-the-wall gang's most ambitious burglary yet. They plan to bag $1 million in cash and jewelry. Their target, the upscale jewelry department in Bertha's gift store.
Bertha's had sound, motion detectors, they had everything in the place. So I knew the only way we could get in there was make entry through the roof into the vault.
On July 4th, with Independence Day celebrations in full swing, the hole-in-the-wall gang makes their move.
Good plan as far as they were concerned. They could cut and drill and do whatever they had to do with the fireworks flashing in the background.
9 p.m. The gang climbs up onto the roof while Cullotta remains behind on the ground. They walk straight into a trap.
We didn't know that the feds were watching us on buildings, on high-rise buildings across the way with binoculars, and they also had planes in the air, and they had cops all over the area.
40 law enforcement agents lie in wait, among them Dennis Arnoldy and Lynn Ferrin. They have been tipped off by a Mafia informant who supplies information in return for leniency from the courts.
We had our arrest teams, our surveillance teams, and we knew exactly what they were going to do. But we had it completely covered. No one could get in and out of there without us knowing that night. And we stayed on the roof behind some large air conditioners.
We could actually watch the hole-in-the-wall gang as they got up onto the roof of Bertha's and started cutting their holes. I'd never seen anything like that in all my time in the FBI.
The FBI waits for the gang to break in before making the bust.
Honestly, I don't know how long we sat there, but we sat there a long time waiting for the word that they had gone into the building. When one of them entered the building, went through the roof, and actually got onto the vault, then we got the signal to go ahead and make the arrest.
Down, come on, get down on the ground. Get down. No, stay down.
The first thing they all did was put their hands up. There was no hesitation.
Stay down. Stay down.
Frank Cullotta and 5 colleagues are taken straight to the city jail. They are immediately charged with burglary, conspiracy to commit burglary, attempted grand larceny, and possession of burglary tools. The FBI and Metro question Cullotta and make him a proposition. Squeal on his boss Spilatro and the mob and become a government witness. Cullotta knows Spilatro is worried he may talk and finds himself in a dangerous position.
Well, I just had the sense that I was going to get whacked. You know, I know the way the game works. You make somebody think you like them, they're your best friend, and then you take them in the back and you shoot them in the head.
Of course he felt threatened by Spilatro. And Frank had been in the, operated with the outfit for years and years. He knew how they operated. And he knew that First thing they would think about is, well, Frank Cullotta talked to the authorities? Well, he might, so maybe we should kill him.
Facing the prospect of either a long jail sentence or being murdered by the mob, Cullotta can make only one decision. He goes against the very principles of Mafia loyalty and becomes a government witness.
We struck a deal, and then I got all these different immunities. And so all I got to do is tell the truth. And that's just what happened.
He probably felt, or I know he felt, that he had no choice. If he was going to protect himself and if he was going to take care of his family, then he was going to have to make a deal and cooperate with us.
It's a coup for Metro and the FBI. Cullotta agrees to testify against Spilatro and provide evidence of his criminal activities. Spilatro's reign in the underworld is now in jeopardy, and the Chicago enforcer isn't the only one facing problems. The authorities continue to deny Spilatro's long-term acquaintance, Frank Rosenthal, a gaming license. Rosenthal is also under increasing scrutiny from the FBI, who aim to prove his links to organized crime in Las Vegas. And then, on October 4th, 1982, the heat is turned up even higher. Rosenthal leaves Tony Roma's restaurant and jumps into his Cadillac to drive home.
I remember it just like it happened 20 minutes ago.
This is what's left of Frank Lefty Rosenthal's Cadillac. Federal officials think the bomb was placed under the gas tank. It appears the force of the explosion blew upward and to the rear.
I didn't hear any noise, but I did visually see flames shooting up from the left side of the car, to the driver's side, and from the right side, and from the dashboard. And my immediate thought process, fortunately I was still conscious, was to exit that automobile. I threw my left shoulder into the door, and I caught a jackpot. It opened.
Felt like a loud sonic boom, and I quickly looked out the window, and 2 cars were on fire.
The explosion was powerful enough to blow the car's roof 60 feet into the air. The steel-plated floor saved Rosenthal from serious injury.
I had a couple broken ribs. I had some first-degree burns and quite a bit of pain.
Will you talk to him about who perhaps did this?
We will talk to him if he desires to talk to us.
The bombing is a strong message. Rosenthal has outstayed his welcome in the city. Although never proven, the suspicion falls on Tony Spilatro and the Chicago outfit. Rosenthal's public fight with the gaming authorities and his TV show are attracting too much attention for the Las Vegas mob. Whoever masterminded the murder attempt, it's enough to convince Frank Rosenthal to pack his bags and head for a new life. In 1982, he leaves Las Vegas. Incredibly, the FBI is never able to prove he had any involvement in the mob's criminal activities. Today, he lives a charmed life as a multimillionaire on Miami's South Beach.
There came a point in time where I determined that in my best interest, the best interest of my family, there was nothing in Nevada that it would be best for me to move on.
As Frank Rosenthal turns his back on Las Vegas, he leaves behind a crumbling criminal empire. Spilatro's superiors in Chicago are enraged. They believe he is losing control of the Las Vegas Mafia underworld. 1985. The Chicago outfit stronghold in Las Vegas is crumbling. Mob enforcer Tony Spilatro is under investigation. His street crews have been busted, and they're squealing on his criminal activities. In addition, the 6-year police and FBI investigation into the casino skim will prove the final nail in the Las Vegas Mafia's coffin. In Operation Strawman, the FBI focused their attention on the records of the Mafia-operated Stardust and Fremont casinos. What they discover is an elaborate skimming system called the fill slip scam. Fill slips are normally given to a cashier in return for casino chips. They require a series of approved signatures. but the FBI suspects the mob is forging the signatures and then cashing in the chips. The money can then pass tax-free straight into the pockets of the mobsters. The FBI believes the scam is taking in $300,000 a month. The federal agents confiscate the fill slips to compare the handwriting of the casino employees with the handwriting of known mobsters.
We just took handwriting samples from, I think it was about 180 or 190 different employees at the Stardust.
It's a breakthrough. The samples from the fill slips match those of several Chicago mobsters. The FBI is finally able to link the Las Vegas skim to Chicago godfather Joey Aiuppa.
Leader of the Chicago faction of organized crime. Joseph Aiuppa's indictment was announced today, along with indictments against 14 others from here and elsewhere.
In January 1986, Aiuppa and the Chicago mobsters are convicted of skimming profits to the tune of $2 million. The court also orders the mob-related Trans-Sterling Corporation to pay a $1 million fine and hand control of the casinos over to a legitimate corporation.
That effectively broke the back of the mob as far as their control of the casinos.
And then, in June 1986, after narrowly escaping conviction a year earlier, Tony Spilotro faces a retrial on multiple charges of running burglary rings, racketeering, and several murders. Frank Cullotta has already provided much of the incriminating evidence against his former boss. But this time, he will testify against Spilotro in court.
Cullotta, now a government informant, is the prosecution's star witness in the upcoming Spilotro trial.
If found guilty, Spilotro could implicate the Chicago outfit in several dozen additional crimes and bring down their organization at every level. The publicity surrounding the case put Spilotro's life in grave danger from the Chicago outfit.
A few days prior to the trial starting again, I received a call from Chicago indicating they had maybe heard some information that Tony wasn't going to show up or that there was a problem. And then when the trial day did come, he did not show up.
Well, I was first notified by an agent. He says Tony and his brother disappeared. He said, where do you think they go? I says, they're dead. He said, well, how could you say that? I said, Tony ain't gonna run, nor is his brother. They're dead. I guarantee you they're dead.
6 days after the trial was due to begin, in Indiana, a farmer makes a grisly discovery: a blood-stained grave in a cornfield. Inside, the severely battered bodies of two men.
A short time ago today, a pathologist at Indiana University positively identified the remains of Anthony Spilotro and his younger brother, Michael Spilotro.
The autopsy report reveals they died from repeated beatings with blunt instruments and asphyxiation. They were probably buried alive.
I don't like the way they were beaten to death. You know, why didn't you just put a bullet in each of their head? Why'd you have to beat them to death and let one brother watch the other brother getting beaten to death? It's a little cold-blooded, you know.
The Spilotro grave is just 5 miles from Chicago boss Joey Aiuppa's country retreat.
If they had the slightest hint that he could be a problem to them, they certainly would make the decision that he had to die to protect the organization.
Spilotro, in spite of being continually under investigation for most of his adult life and suspected in over 25 murders and countless other felonies, oversaw Las Vegas for 14 years without ever being convicted of a single major offense. Las Vegas was once home to the most powerful mob empire in North America. But Spilotro's introduction of street crime led to the mob's demise and gave the authorities the chance they needed to make their move. The old-time mafiosi that helped to build and run the city have gone, it seems, for good.